I get it, you're curious, and you want to know what happened. Why wouldn't you? It's not every day that a situation like this goes viral, right? You probably clicked on this video because you've seen the title. Racist waitress goes viral for ignoring black customer. The unexpected twist will amaze you. And if you're like most people, you're probably thinking you already know how this story plays out. You think you know what's coming. But here's the thing, you have no idea. I'm not here to give you the usual. No, this one's different. Stick with me, because the twist that's coming, well, it's one that's going to leave you speechless. Now, you might be wondering what's so special about this particular video. You've heard the headlines, you've seen the viral moments, but I promise you, the real story lies in what comes next. And I need you to pay attention, because by the end of this video, you're going to feel completely different about everything. If you thought you knew how these things unfold, think again. What happens here is going to challenge everything you've thought about social justice, human behavior, and even the power of social media in today's world. The story begins with an incident that, on the surface, seems all too familiar. A waitress, her behavior caught on camera, and a black customer who's completely ignored. The video of the incident spreads quickly across social media, stirring up outrage, and soon it becomes one of the most talked about viral moments of the year. People everywhere start expressing their disgust over the waitress's actions, and within hours, it becomes headline news. In a world where racial tensions are still very much alive, this video was a spark that many thought could ignite a firestorm of controversy. The internet's immediate reaction was predictable. How could anyone treat another human being like this? But that's not the full story. Not by a long shot. I know what you're probably thinking. The waitress messed up, and she's probably going to face consequences, right? Well, that's where things get really interesting. Because as more details started to emerge, this incident took a completely unexpected turn that no one could have predicted. It's not just about what the waitress did or didn't do. There's so much more going on here than meets the eye. This is not a simple story of racial discrimination, and it's certainly not a straightforward tale of justice. Trust me when I say, you're about to discover things that will blow your mind, and I guarantee it's going to make you question everything you thought you knew about the situation. The key to this story lies in the people involved, and I'm not just talking about the waitress and the customer. There are other players here, and they're about to reveal secrets, motives, and actions that will completely alter your perception. It's a story that raises serious questions about personal accountability, redemption, and even the impact of viral videos. And here's the kicker. The twist? It's going to flip your entire perspective upside down. It's not just about who's wrong and who's right. It's about the complexity of human behavior and how we, as a society, interpret the smallest actions and the loudest accusations. I want you to stay with me because in just a few moments, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened next. The part you won't see coming. I know you're sitting there thinking, what could possibly be so shocking about this? But trust me, this story has layers. You're going to see things from an angle you never even considered. And when you do, you might find yourself asking, did I misjudge this whole situation? You might find yourself questioning the very nature of social media outrage and whether or not we've all been too quick to assume the worst without knowing the full story. There's a lot of noise on the internet, a lot of finger pointing, a lot of assumptions. But in this case, the real truth, it's not what you think. The true narrative here is hidden in the details, and it's going to hit harder than you expect. And when I tell you the next part of the story, you're going to be glued to your seat. So, if you're ready to uncover the unexpected twist, stay tuned because this is about to get wild. I promise you, the ending is going to be worth every second of your time. You might not believe me now, but when you see what happens next, everything will make sense. This is the kind of story that stays with you. It challenges you. It forces you to look beyond the surface and dive deep into what really matters. And once you reach the end, you'll realize why everything unfolded the way it did. You'll never look at viral videos the same way again. Now, don't go anywhere. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for what happens next. It's a roller coaster of emotion, surprises, and a reminder that things are rarely what they seem. Ready to find out the truth behind the viral moment? Let's dive in and uncover the twist that no one saw coming. Stay with me until the end, and I promise you'll be amazed. I'm glad you've stuck around. Because what happens next is even more unsettling than you could have imagined. It's not just a case of poor service or ignorance. It's the complexity of human relationships and the hidden forces at play that complicate this seemingly simple incident. We've all heard stories of viral moments that stir up rage online, but what we often don't realize is how quickly assumptions form and how little we know about the full picture. And that's exactly where this story takes an unexpected turn. To understand the bigger picture, you need to understand where it all started, how the people involved got to this point, and the web of connections that made this moment so much more than just a random act of prejudice. Let's go back to the beginning, when a seemingly routine day in a small, local restaurant became the stage for something that would forever alter the lives of those involved. It was a quiet afternoon when the customer, a black man who had just moved to the area, entered the restaurant. He'd heard good things about this place from some of his new neighbors, so he decided to give it a try. He wasn't expecting anything extraordinary, just a simple meal to break up the monotony of his day. The waitress, a young woman in her mid-20s, had no idea that this one interaction would set off a chain of events that would engulf her in a storm of controversy, while simultaneously shining a harsh light on the larger issues of race and social justice. The waitress, whose name we won't mention yet, had been working at this family-owned restaurant for over a year. She had always prided herself on her ability to balance her responsibilities, managing multiple tables, dealing with difficult customers, and maintaining the flow of the busy lunchtime rush. She wasn't a bad person, at least by most measures. She had a history of being helpful and friendly to regulars, but there was something in the air that day, something that made her interactions with the black customer feel off from the start. It wasn't that she had a personal vendetta against him or anyone of his race. She wasn't overtly racist, but there were subtle biases, unspoken prejudices that had been cultivated over years of living in a small, predominantly homogeneous town. She didn't even know it, but they were there, lurking in the background of her mind, influencing her every action. This is where things start to get tricky, because it's not just about the waitress. It's about the bigger context in which all of this is happening. This wasn't just any town. It was a place where racial tensions had simmered beneath the surface for decades. People didn't often talk about it, but it was there in the casual glances, in the way people moved when they saw someone different. It's a place where some people had never truly interacted with people of other races, and when they did, it was often awkward, uncomfortable, or laced with assumptions that didn't reflect the truth. So, when a black customer walked in, he became a symbol of the unfamiliar, of the change that had been quietly creeping into this insular world. And in that moment, the waitress didn't know how to react. Instead of engaging with him as a customer, she hesitated. She avoided eye contact, didn't acknowledge his presence the way she would with any other customer. It wasn't malicious. It was just a product of the conditioning that had taken place over years. But the real mystery wasn't in the waitress's actions alone. The story doesn't end there, and what followed is what truly sets this incident apart. As the minutes passed, the black customer, now feeling ignored and uncomfortable, began to wonder why he was being treated differently. He wasn't one to make a scene, but he had a strong sense of justice. The moment he realized he wasn't going to be acknowledged, something shifted inside of him. He pulled out his phone and began recording, capturing the waitress's behavior on camera. The video would go on to change everything. You see, this wasn't just about a waiter forgetting to take an order. This was about something deeper. When the video was posted online, it didn't take long for it to catch fire. The story quickly spread across social media, with people sharing it at an alarming rate. The outrage was palpable as people began calling for accountability. #RacistWaitress was trending within hours, and the comments came flooding in from all over the world. Everyone had an opinion, and everyone seemed to have a clear idea of who was to blame. The black customer was hailed as a hero by some, someone brave enough to stand up against systemic racism. The waitress, on the other hand, was labeled as a bigot, someone who woefully ignored another human being because of the color of his skin. At first, the waitress was silent. She didn't know what to say. How could she defend herself when the entire internet seemed to have made up their mind about her? But what no one knew, not even the people who were posting about her online, was that there was more to her story than they could ever imagine. And when the twist eventually came, It sent shockwaves through the very people who thought they had the situation figured out. In the days following the viral video, something strange began to happen. The people who had initially condemned the waitress began to question the situation. The story wasn't adding up, and they weren't the only ones who noticed. Some of the regulars at the restaurant, people who knew both the waitress and the black customer, began coming forward with different versions of the events. They spoke of how the customer had been acting strangely from the moment he walked in. Some even claimed that they had overheard him making disparaging comments about the waitress and other staff members when he thought no one was listening. But it wasn't just what the regulars said that made people start to doubt the narrative. It was a discovery of the waitress's past. She wasn't some casual server with no aspirations or care for others. No, she had a history of activism and had worked for years in various communities to bridge gaps and foster understanding. Her behavior that day was completely out of character, and it made people wonder, was there something more going on here? As the story unfolded, even more layers of complexity were revealed. The waitress, despite the initial backlash, came forward with her side of the story. She admitted that she had been distracted and, frankly, anxious that day. It wasn't about race at all, but about the pressure she felt in her personal life. Her marriage had been crumbling, and the stress of balancing work with a failing relationship had taken a toll on her mental state. She was embarrassed by how she acted, not because of any racial bias, but because of the anxiety that clouded her judgment. But the story didn't stop there. It turned out that the black customer, who had been so quick to pull out his phone and capture the waitress's actions, had his own history that made him an unreliable narrator in this story. Some of his previous interactions in the town had raised eyebrows. People spoke of his past, which, if true, would paint him in a different light than what the viral video portrayed. At this point, it was no longer just a viral moment. It was a mystery, one that had no easy answers. As each new detail emerged, the question shifted from who's right to what really happened here and now. With the story continuing to unfold in front of millions of viewers, the tension in the town was rising. People were beginning to choose sides, but no one could deny that there were far more questions than answers. With the social media storm continuing to rage, the waitress found herself facing not only the judgment of the internet, but also the real-world consequences of viral video gone wrong. And as for the black customer, his past began to surface, causing some people to wonder if there was more to the story than they had been led to believe. The only thing everyone knew for sure was that they didn't know the full truth. The narrative was far from resolved, and each new revelation only deepened the mystery of what had really happened that day. As the days stretched into weeks, the firestorm of opinion surrounding the incident continued to burn, showing no signs of fading. It was a story that captured the attention of millions, and while it had started with a single viral video, it had transformed into a full-fledged media frenzy. The internet, for all its power, can be a cruel judge. A single clip, a moment of human error, became a lightning rod for everyone's opinions on race, privilege, and justice. The waitress's face had become synonymous with racism for many, while others clung to belief that there was more to her actions than met the eye. Yet as the fire grew, so did the shadows of doubt creeping into the narrative. The lines between right and wrong, truth and manipulation, were beginning to blur. One of the first major twists came when the waitress's personal life was laid bare for the world to see. It had been easy for people to condemn her from the comfort of their screens. But the more the story unfolded, the more details began to emerge about the kind of woman she was. Her marriage, now under public scrutiny, had been on the rocks for months before the incident. Her husband, once a reliable presence in her life, had become distant and aloof, absorbed in his own world of work and personal struggles. The pressure of managing a difficult marriage, a stressful job, and the daily grind of life had started to take its toll on her mental health. What the public didn't know was that she had been undergoing therapy for months, working through her anxiety, her fears, and her overwhelming sense of failure. These were not excuses, but they painted a picture of someone struggling, not someone who had maliciously mistreated another person based on their race. But as the revelations about the waitress's personal struggles came to light, an entirely new perspective emerged about the black customer. The internet had initially embraced him as the voice of reason, the symbol of righteous indignation. Yet, The more people dug into his past, the more troubling things started to surface. Unbeknownst to many, he had been involved in several controversial incidents in the town before the restaurant encounter. There were whispers about his behavior, his history of contentious interactions with others. It wasn't just that he recorded the waitress's actions. It was the way he had handled the situation that made people start to question his motives. What seemed like a simple act of standing up for his rights now appeared more calculated. Had he intentionally gone to that restaurant, knowing it would trigger an event that would go viral? Could there be a deeper motive behind his decision to pull out his phone and record? This new layer of complexity only added fuel to the fire of the debate that was consuming the town and the online world. Yet, there was something else, something even more unsettling, that nobody had yet discovered. Hidden behind the headlines, the social media posts, and the fierce opinions of millions was a tangled web of connections, all of which were linked to powerful forces that had been quietly pulling the strings in the background. A few days after the initial wave of outrage, a mysterious individual reached out to both the waitress and the black customer. This person had access to private information, and they knew things about both of them that no one else did. It wasn't just about the viral video anymore. It was about something much bigger. The contact, anonymous for now, claimed to have evidence that neither side had been entirely honest in their account of what happened. The truth, this mysterious individual suggested, was far more complicated than anyone could have ever imagined. This new twist sent shockwaves through the narrative. The waitress, still reeling from the backlash and public shaming, found herself grappling with the idea that someone was watching her every move, someone who knew too much. But more than that, she feared that this mysterious figure could expose something about her that she had been hiding, something darker than the incident itself. It wasn't just the pain of losing her job or the damage to her reputation. It was a looming fear of something far more sinister, something buried deep within her past. She had kept this part of her life hidden for years, and now it seemed like it was coming to light in the worst possible way. The black customer, on the other hand, had always considered himself someone who sought justice, someone who had fought against systemic oppression his entire life. But the whispers about his past actions, the instances where he had caused trouble, alienated people, or sparked conflicts, began to haunt him as well. There was an uncomfortable truth that had remained buried beneath the surface. His personal history was far more complicated than the narrative he had been presenting. Could he, too, be hiding something that could destroy his newfound public persona? Was he really the hero he had been portrayed as? Or was there a darker side to him that no one was ready to confront? These questions loomed large over him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the situation was spiraling out of control. Meanwhile, the small town where all of this had unfolded was beginning to feel the effects of the viral controversy. The community, once close-knit and relatively peaceful, had become divided. Families, friends, and neighbors were picking sides, and tensions were running high. People who had once been cordial and friendly were now avoiding one another, their conversations filled with suspicion and judgment. At the heart of the unrest was the restaurant, the place where everything had started. Customers who had once frequented the establishment were now boycotting it, while others rallied behind the waitress, insisting that she was the victim of a smear campaign. The restaurant's owners, once caught up in their own struggles to stay afloat in an increasingly competitive market, now found themselves facing an existential crisis. They were caught between the social media storm and the financial realities of running a small business, unsure of how to navigate the fallout from this viral incident. In an effort to salvage their reputation and avoid further damage, the restaurant's management decided to make a public statement, one that would hopefully calm the growing chaos. The statement, crafted carefully and released through social media channels, attempted to explain the situation from the restaurant's perspective. They apologized for the incident, but they also made it clear that the restaurant would not tolerate harassment or violence, regardless of who was involved. This was an attempt to distance themselves from the controversy while trying to maintain some semblance of business as usual. But this move only added more fuel to the fire. Those who had already formed opinions were now more convinced than ever that the restaurant was just another example of systemic bias, while others felt the apology was an attempt to deflect blame from the real issues at play. As the town spiraled deeper into division, the mysterious figure continued to manipulate the situation behind the scenes. The cryptic messages and demands they had made of both the waitress and the black customer were becoming more frequent and more intense. Whoever this person was, they seemed to have an agenda that went beyond simply exposing the truth. They were trying to control the narrative, forcing both parties to make choices that would ultimately lead them down paths they might not have chosen for themselves. Then, the unthinkable happened. In a stunning twist, a new piece of evidence surfaced, one that completely changed everything. It wasn't a video or a tweet. It was a hidden document, an old letter that had been stored away for years, buried deep in the archives of the restaurant. The letter contained information about a previous incident, one that involved the black customer long before he had ever walked into that restaurant. This letter revealed that the customer had once been involved in a scandalous affair with a powerful local figure, one that had been swept under the rug. The affair had led to a series of legal battles, but the details had been kept quiet. The document also suggested that the customer had used his newfound fame from a viral video as leverage to settle old scores with people who had wronged him in the past. With this new revelation, the stakes were higher than ever. The true nature of the conflict was no longer just about the incident at the restaurant. It was about the hidden lives of the people involved, the secrets they had tried to bury, and the lengths they were willing to go to protect their reputations. The mysterious figure behind it all was playing a dangerous game, and no one could predict where it would end. The story had become a complex web of lies, deception, and betrayal, and the truth, if it could even be found, was slipping further away with each passing day. Now, more than ever, everyone involved had to make a choice. Would they confront the darkness within themselves and uncover the full truth, or would they let the story continue to spiral out of control, with no way back? The stakes had never been higher, and the final act of this twisted drama was about to unfold. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, the tension in the air grew unbearable. The waitress, once a symbol of shame and guilt in the eyes of the world, had started to unravel the mystery of the hidden letter. She had learned about the secret affair from a letter that surfaced in the archives of the restaurant, a document that shed light on the connection between the black customer and a powerful local figure. But this letter wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a bombshell, one that could change the course of everything. She had always suspected that there was more to the story than what had been portrayed in the viral video. Now, she was closer than ever to discovering the truth. The affair, the scandal, and the legal battles were not just a distant part of her own story. They were part of something much larger, something that could ruin lives. The customer, for his part, was equally aware that the truth was slipping from his grasp. His carefully crafted persona, as the hero, the voice of justice, was now under attack. The whispers of his past, his connection to the local power structure, his involvement in the affair and the controversial legal battles, were beginning to surface. For the first time, he found himself questioning the narrative he had told the world. Had he been honest about his motives when he started recording the waitress's actions? Was he truly standing up for what was right, or had he been using the situation for personal gain? The answer, it seemed, was far from clear. Every step he took now felt like walking on a tightrope, balancing between truth and lies, justice and manipulation. But the real shock came when the mysterious figure behind the scenes finally revealed themselves. It wasn't just someone with access to private information. It was someone with a vendetta, someone who had been waiting for the right moment to expose the truth. The figure, whose identity had remained hidden for so long, had been manipulating both the waitress and the customer from the shadows. They had been orchestrating this entire drama, pulling strings and feeding information to both parties, all in the name of some greater cause. But as the story unfolded, it became clear that this wasn't just about exposing one individual's wrongdoing. It was about something much deeper. This was a battle for control, for power, for the right to shape the narrative. The waitress, now desperate for answers, reached out to the black customer. They had been at odds for so long, each blaming the other for the events that had transpired. But now they had no choice but to work together. They needed to uncover the truth about the mysterious figure, about the hidden agenda that had been driving their actions all along. Together, they began to dig deeper, following a trail of clues that led them to the darkest corners of their community. They discovered that the mysterious figure wasn't just some outsider. It was someone they both knew, someone they both trusted. In a shocking twist, It was revealed that the person behind the scenes was none other than the restaurant owner, the very person who had been trying to distance themselves from the controversy. The owner, it seemed, had orchestrated the entire viral incident in a bid to shift public attention away from their own legal troubles. They had been under investigation for years, and the viral video provided the perfect diversion. By manipulating the situation, they had successfully redirected the focus of the media and the public toward the waitress and the black customer, while keeping their own secrets hidden. The owner had been playing both sides, feeding information to both parties, all while maintaining the appearance of being an innocent bystander. But now, the truth had come to light. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community. People who had once rallied behind the waitress, who had demanded justice for the black customer, now found themselves questioning everything they had believed. The restaurant, once a staple in the town, was now seen as a symbol of deceit and manipulation. The owners, who had once been respected members of the community, were now the subject of scorn and outrage. The waitress and the black customer, who had been pitted against each other by the viral incident, now found themselves standing side by side, united in their shared mission to expose the truth. But the story didn't end there. The real twist, the one that nobody had seen coming, was revealed in the final moments of the investigation. The waitress, who had been struggling to hold on to her sense of self in the face of the public backlash, found something in the restaurant archives that changed everything. Hidden deep within the records was another letter, one that had been deliberately kept from the public eye. This letter contained a confession from the restaurant owner, a confession that not only implicated them in the viral incident, but also revealed a much deeper conspiracy. The owner, it seemed, had been involved in a scheme to cover up a series of financial misdeeds that had been going on for years. They had used a viral video to distract the authorities from their financial crimes, all while manipulating the community's emotions to protect their own interests. The waitress, now in possession of this damning evidence, found herself faced with a moral dilemma. She could expose the truth and bring down the restaurant owner, but doing so would also destroy her own life. The public would see her as complicit in the owner's scheme, and the backlash would be even worse than before. But as she kept silent, the truth would never be known, and the cycle of manipulation would continue. In the end, she chose to do what she felt was right. She released the evidence, exposing the restaurant owner's crimes and clearing her own name in the process. The fallout was immediate, but it was also necessary. The restaurant was shut down, the owner was arrested, and the community was forced to reckon with the truth. For the black customer, the resolution of the story was bittersweet. He had been a part of the viral incident, but he had never intended for it to spiral out of control in the way it had. In the end, he found himself facing the consequences of his own actions, and he realized that the fight for justice wasn't always as simple as it seemed. He, too, had to reckon with his own past and the ways in which he had contributed to the conflict. But in the end, he came to a realization. True justice wasn't about winning or losing. It was about confronting the truth, no matter how painful it might be. As the dust settled, the waitress and the black customer parted ways, their paths diverging once again. But the story of their ordeal would linger in the minds of those who had followed it. The viral video, the accusations of twists and turns, it was a reminder of the complexities of human behavior, the ways in which people were shaped by their past, and the power of truth to set them free. In the end, what had started as a simple moment of tension in a restaurant had become a saga of lies, manipulation, and redemption. It had revealed the darkness lurking in the corners of a small town, but it had also shown the strength of the human spirit to rise above it. The true power of the story wasn't just in the shocking twists or the dramatic revelations. It was in resilience of the individuals involved, and the courage it took to confront the truth, no matter the cost. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of inner strength and resilience. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never forget your worth.